I'm Alan Abrahamson. I'm the founder and columnist at Three Wire Sports in California. In Los Angeles, it's always a pleasure to be here in New York. With me is Maître Francois Carrard. Mr. Carrard and I have known each other for many years. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
My pleasure too.
So, sport and music are the two things that are universal, that cross boundaries, and so I'm going to refer to a song by David Byrne and the Talking Heads that many of you, I think, know. That has some relevance to FIFA. The refrain goes, "Same as it ever was," but there's another line in that song that goes, "How did we get here?" It's actually, "How did I get here?" But in this case, how did we get here? Take us to where we are now, please.
When you say who are we talking about? You and I, we know why we're here.
Exactly.
You mean FIFA?
I mean FIFA.
Ah, surprise, surprise.
Surprise. And by the way, are those awesome socks or what?
Come on. Well, I think we are here because FIFA is in a crisis which was triggered by rather violent intrusion of the police forces in Zurich in May 2015, caused the arrest of 7 individuals, and I think that absolutely was a triggering factor for a crisis which is very serious.
So chronologically, from your perspective, what has happened of moment since that event in May at the Hotel Bar du Lac?
Well, I'll leave apart all the aspects of the investigation and the procedural aspects of what's going on, because it is not at all within my remit. As far as I'm concerned, I have been asked to chair this committee in late July, early August 2015. It's a committee of 12 people, I think very dedicated people. To be frank, I was under attack from day one because I said, "You are the only so-called independent chairman, and all the rest are people stemming from the various confederations." And I must say that since then I've worked with the members of the committee and found some people who are totally committed and dedicated to reform, and who are also very realistic about the job to be done. So as far as I'm concerned, what has happened since May? No summer holiday, serious problems with my wife, but we've been married 49 years, so it's not too bad. She can take another 49. And hard work, a lot of work to prepare this reform. The mission is to propose to the Executive Committee of FIFA in its meeting, which will be held December 2nd, which is very early, a package of reforms, essentially reforms of, I would say, structures, statutes, and hopefully have the FIFA Congress on February 26 adopting these reforms.
So why in the world would someone like you agree to take on this position? What prompted you to take on this madness?
It's because, as you said, I like music. I'm sorry. I love sport. I think I have spent a lot of my life, well, you know, when you're talking about term limits and age limits, I'm the vivid example of what one should not do. I'm 77 years old, and I started working with the IOC as a council in 1979. I have exhausted 4 presidents, Kilanin, Samaranch, Rog, and not yet exhausted the current president, Thomas Bach. I was asked insistently because of the fact that I was involved front row in the 1998 scandal of the IOC concerning the Salt Lake City games, and probably I've been lured by the temptation to assist, to help, because I believe football is a fantastic universal sport, and trying to help. And if I succeed, I'm happy, and if I don't succeed, I will be sad. But I think there's a challenge. I'm very committed to that, and I think I can bring my little stone and contribute. They insisted that they should have someone outside from FIFA itself. I've never had any job for FIFA as a lawyer. I've always been
But
kept
this
away.
is one of the criticisms of you as well, as we both know, that you are, let's say, inside the club. How can someone like you, who's been in the world of sport, the world of international sport for so long, effect meaningful change?
Well, any club has many members, honorary members, active members, passive members. Globally, there is a club, I don't deny it, of course, but being some sort of an insider is, in my opinion, necessary. One of the challenges which I face is the difficulty to explain. People always say you must have outside people, outside advisors, outside competence, independent advisors, people who are from outside. It's all very well. In fact, FIFA started a reform process in 2011 with an excellent group of independent advisors, the International Governance Committee, Independent Governance Committee, I'm sorry. And the reforms which were then proposed were excellent. But I think at some point in time you need insiders. If you want to get an institution to be reformed, you need insiders to push them, to get them through and to vote them. And if you're only acting from the outside, your chances to succeed are, in my opinion, more limited.
You referred to the 1998 corruption scandal involving Salt Lake City's winning bid for the 2002 Olympic Games.
Yes.
I see Mr. Pound in the front row here. Mr. Pound was instrumental in the reaction to that scandal. I wrote many stories about those events. Are there parallels or not between what happened with the IOC in the late 1990s and FIFA, or not?
There are parallels and there are differences. The parallels is that some, I would say, unexpected event triggers the crisis. The crisis was probably boiling somewhere, and in the case of the IOC, it was not the police, it was an IOC member accusing his colleagues of corruption at an unexpected press briefing, which I was supposed to hold. And so it was quite surprising. The parallel is also that there was the immediate, huge, massive media interest and placing the institution in the most difficult situation, massive reaction from the sponsors, from the public opinion at large, from the authorities as well. In the IOC's case, we had the juridical authorities being quite involved, and the political authorities too in Washington. The differences, I would say, is that the IOC was a few individual members. Maybe it's the same thing now with the FIFA, taking into account the numbers of individuals who have been involved. But the IOC was more a body of maybe 100 members or so. Once the reform process was decided, it was probably easier, I would say probably much easier to implement it because there was a direct line and only 100 members. Here you are dealing with an organization which has 209 worldwide different member national associations with differences of culture. And the challenge, I would say, is larger. But one must never forget also that FIFA has done many wonderful things and still currently has many wonderful people at all levels doing great things for the development of football. It's a tentacular organization, and it's I would say a heavier challenge to tackle the reform process.
So let's assume hypothetically, let's assume hypothetically that FIFA is systemically corrupt.
Which I don't believe.
Okay. Why the U.S. Justice Department? There's an argument to be made that only the Americans could do this. But there's also an argument to be made that the Americans should have butted out in the first instance. Why the Americans?
Well, I will not enter into the legal analysis of why, because I understand there are judicial procedures going on, and the Department of Justice is involved, and there are accusations of various crimes, and I have it's none of my remit to follow that part of the problem. When you are global nowadays, whatever you do in the world, the Americans are always there.
So, which leads to the next question.
I'm sorry to say, I'm Swiss, you know.
Well, and that's exactly the next question.
And I have no...
The corollary, Francois.
My bank account number is published everywhere, probably in Washington, D.C. as well now.
Congrats.
Although it's open.
How far really, how far really do the Swiss go, have they gone, and are they going now, in holding accountable the many, many sports governing bodies that are based in Switzerland? They're based in Switzerland for a reason.
Well, they're based in Switzerland because basically, first of all, I think the Swiss legal system in terms of, I wouldn't say corporate law, but association law is quite flexible and allows, is quite well adjusted for international non-governmental organizations, basically, but that's an older story. For many, and there is no government supervision or control on these organizations, most of them. But I would say now all this has been evolving very quickly in the last years. There are new regulations in place, there are new laws in place, there are new obligations placed on the sports federations. For instance, if you are a sports administrator of an international federation or organization, you are immediately characterized as a politically exposed person, which means that any bank which is dealing with the organization must conduct a much more in-depth due diligence. And there's parliamentary debates on getting tougher supervision, so the Swiss are quite interested, and times are changing.
I always like to say, and I wrote in a column about USA Track and Field a few weeks ago, that nobody cares about governance until actually they do. Nobody cares about process until actually they do. Why don't you walk us through some of the reforms that have been published in the first proposed bulletin, which was issued on October 20th. Term limits, age limits, background check, and more.
Well, first of all, we published this status report, which we thought, when we say we, it's the committee, totally freely and independently. We felt it important to be published and to be known, to show the status of our current work, which is, as I repeat, work in progress. We haven't concluded our work yet. We also thought, first of all, we thought it was important that people know what we are doing, and that also triggered and triggers a number of reactions, which are very important and useful for the continuation and the finalization of our work. So the status report which was published is not a FIFA status report, it's a status report of our committee, and FIFA absolutely didn't challenge our desire to have this published. Now, as to the reforms, term limits, I think we have reached a consensus, and there I am back to the similarities with the IOC discussions in the 2000 Reform Commission, of which Mr. Pond was also a member, incidentally. At length, what should we limit the term of office of a president? 1 year, 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, etc. We ended up with the consensus on 12 years, like is the case, for instance, in some institutions such as the IOC. What we haven't finalized yet is whether it should be 3 times 4, or 6 plus 6, or 8 plus 4, because we are considering the consequences of a If it's a short term, the president is campaigning again soon for his re-election, and that might not be the best way. Anyhow, this is an open discussion, but the consensus is on 12 years. We think it's good. In a worldwide organization with 209 countries involved, it takes time to know the people, to know the countries, to know the cultures, to know everything. So it takes 3-4 years to know where you are. Then you can really produce good work for a number of years, and if you're excellent, maybe you deserve an extra 4 years or something like that. So there we agreed.
The idea of age limits?
Age limit is also an element on which we have agreed. What we have not yet agreed on, or is still under discussion, is whether we will propose term limits for all other functions. There should be executive committee, there should be within the confederations and the national associations. There are some discussions, because in some countries, if you put term limits, say also 12 years, for instance, or less, or if you have an excellent young leader in a given country, which does not have many or much talent available to succeed that young leader, you could have an excellent leader aged 25. By the time he's 37 or 38 to 40, if he cannot go on, in some cases, it's a pity. In some other cases, you can renew and provide more talents, but there comes the difficulty which we face in many situations in our work. You have to think globally. You have to think that Vietnam is not like German Switzerland. You have to think like Madagascar is not like Mexico, etc., etc. Huge country is not like a tiny one, you know. Andorra is not China, as far as I remember, and so on. So we are facing this kind of, and we still have these issues, but where we all agreed there must be an age limit, and we felt that the last time you should apply for some position should be when you are 70, hence 74 as a cutoff limit for all functions. But this is work in progress.
What about, speaking of that, there are also reforms proposed by Mr. Scala. How do the two proposals interact or confront each other?
We have worked, I would say, hand in hand with Mr. Scala. He attended, he was my first participant in the first meeting of the Congress, and we have abundantly considered all the reforms he has proposed, which are excellent, I must say. Most of them, we are in full agreement on most of them. On some reforms, we view things a bit differently. I'll give you an example. President Xi, he advocates a rotating presidency. Well, he's Swiss like me, and the problem we have in Switzerland with the rotating presidency is that it's our political system. We have an executive branch of the government which consists of 7 members, 7 ministers. And each year, the president of the country, the head of state, it's a rotating presidency. And I must confess to you, we have the election of the president by the parliament in a couple of weeks. I am a lawyer, I'm following politics, I have no idea who will be the next Swiss president, and I don't care. Because they are the 7 members, I know them, but it's to show you that the rotating presidency, we don't care. I know now the current president is a lady, incidentally, but the next one, you can swear me in. I have no idea of who it is. I will read in the paper the morning of the election, oh yeah, that's a rotating presidency, which to me gives an indication that it's not providing, as a president, enough leadership. And we advocate in the reform a stronger leadership position for the president to control a worldwide, to exercise a function over the whole country. This is the sort of differences we have, but it doesn't affect, I would say, the reform process at all. There we agree totally. So on the
I think everyone in this room, everyone listening in, knows full well who the president of FIFA is.
Yeah, well, I can tell you I'm a Swiss and I don't know who the next is.
But I have written before that it would not surprise me at all if Mr. Blatter ends up staying and serving all 4 years. Thoughts on that?
Well, the Congress is to be held on 26th of February. to the best of my knowledge, he's not a candidate. He's currently suspended, and I think there are talents and candidates, and I hope that what I hope is that we have a chance, our committee, is to talk to the candidates to make sure so that our reforms are supported by them.
So another little bit of controversy. You made some remarks earlier this summer about soccer in the United States. And women's soccer in particular. You said it was, quote, not a true American sport, and, quote, there, it's just an ethnic sport for girls in schools. Should we try to take two?
Yeah. First of all, I was absolutely relieved to find out that I was admitted on immigration when I arrived here, because I was afraid after the flack I took after these remarks. These remarks were misinterpretation of an interview which I gave to a Swiss paper. I was chastised, I was disbarred, prevented from making any further comments for the rest of my life, but I'm trying to survive. No, thanks for the question. What I said was very simple, but was totally misunderstood. First of all, soccer in the United States has become a very, very important sport. I was referring, and when, as I said, I'm a bit old, so you should never go back to your memories. I was a high school student in California in 1955. Came by
John
ship.
Muir
High School, Pasadena, California. I came by ship, not by airplane. Told you what it was. At that time, I was already a great soccer fan. I was even playing badly in my school, and I was moved away from the varsity team in Switzerland. That's not why I went to the States, but nevertheless, I loved it. And I tried to watch games or maybe even to play some soccer. We're talking 1955 in Southern California. The only way I could play or see some soccer was to go to some ethnics. There were ethnic stadiums, or there were ethnic groups playing at that time soccer. My friends in California, they looked at me. They said, yeah, you know how to kick, maybe you can kick the extra field goal or something like that, but we don't want to see you. That's what I meant at that time in the States. My understanding was that it was mostly, I call it ethnic, but it's bad English maybe, but it was played by the ethnic groups, so on. Then about the women. Soccer is a wonderful sport for women. The United States has, what I would say, the perfect team. What I was saying is that I noticed over the years that soccer began, in my opinion, to develop itself a lot through girls' soccer in schools. Many of my friends said, oh, it's wonderful, all my girls, our daughters play soccer. That's what I meant. I never meant to say that it was not. So I stand corrected, I hope, and I'm going to take the stand if I have to, and apologize for my statements which were not well understood, but to me soccer is a major sport worldwide and also in the US, and I never meant to say it was sort of a second-class sport. Never would have I meant so. But maybe sometimes lawyers should speak less. So thank you for this morning.
Sticking for a moment with the issue of women in soccer, not just in the game itself, but in the community and in leadership positions, excuse me. One of the most interesting documents that's been put out is from the Australian EXCO member, Moya Dodd. And she says that the problem with FIFA is that it is, as far as women go, there are problems of, quote, underrepresentation and under-resourcing. And she says the women's role in the game is perhaps the, quote, most profound, long-standing, and systemic injustice in sport. Where do we go from that?
We go from there to the point that she could make that statement in many institutions, many countries of the world, in many situations. There is no doubt that the gender equality is a fundamental issue to which we are committed. But it's also absolutely true that it's a very difficult challenge, it's a very difficult issue, and it has to be it has to be pursued. We are going to come out with a reform committee with a specific recommendation on the issue of women, also in leadership in sport, but it's a very difficult one, and it has to be tackled day after day. Now, we maybe look as, you know, we can boast about saying that the current statutes of FIFA are such that there is a compulsory requirement that at least one member of the executive should be a woman. We are going to come with a definite proposal, not a recommendation, that we're multiplying this by 6. That looks very, you know, it's empty or half full. Multiplying by 6 looks very, but it's still by far not enough as a way to solve the overall problem of gender equality, and we have we are very committed to that, but we know that it's not for a reform committee to resolve all this. It takes time. It has to be done everywhere and persistently, consistently. But this is an issue you find everywhere in the world, in politics, in my country, in the boardrooms, in politics. Incidentally, the Swiss president, Carrard, I know, she's a woman, rotating woman.
So going back to the source documents again, the report committee report talks about the importance of affecting, 1, principles of governance reform, and 2, principles of leadership for FIFA to affect cultural change. Again, cultural change. It goes on to say that FIFA and its member associations, and I'm quoting here, ladies and gentlemen, must unite around a core set of principles that communicate its seriousness of purpose, as well as enforce meaningful cultural reform to truly change the organization for the better. Then it ticks off responsibility, humility, tone at the top, respect, and candor. These things are perhaps easy to articulate, but hard to do. How really do you effect cultural change in an organization such as FIFA?
We think a change of culture is a fundamental issue. We are going to come with proposals, which we are still discussing, as to ways to come, I would say it from top down, to enact these changes, because you must see that it's not only talks in committees or talks at the tops of the leadership, but it must go down, be understood. And there is a huge job to be done there, but it's essential, and we think there are ways and means that FIFA can do it without destroying the structure, without also raising the cost unnecessarily. We are currently working on that.
So again, is it a systemic problem or a personality problem or both?
When you have a crisis, you have usually a systemic and personality problem.
And where do you start? With the personalities or with the system?
Both.
Last week in Washington, D.C., the president of the International Olympic Committee, Mr. Bach, talked about good governance. He said there was 2 sides of one coin.
That's right.
He said one side of the coin is autonomy, and the other is good governance. He said we cannot request autonomy from our partners, meaning in politics, business, and society at large, if we do not comply with the standards of good governance. And then he also said it was up to sport to provide what he called, quote unquote, assurances that the money that's derived from sport would be used appropriately. Is that about it? Is that really, in a nutshell, what you're trying to get at?
I think it's quite right. Incidentally, part of the reforms we are working on are more control of money in and money out. But I think this image of 2 sides to the coin, I think, is quite accurate. You cannot claim autonomy and specificity, which means that you claim some sort of a special treatment in society because you're carrying out an activity for the benefit of the youth. You cannot claim it without the other side of the coin, ensuring that you are offering excellent governance. And that's a big challenge. And you know, good governance in sport, It's easier to impose good governance when you are in corporate structures. You have share owners, you have general assemblies of people who are, and in the Western world in particular, there is a conscience of what is required in terms of good governance. But I'm sorry to say there are some countries in the world where you talk about governance, they think it's governance. They say hello, and they say they're talking about governance. So where is the governance? No, it's a concept. It's not an individual. There's a lot of work to be done, and again, when you have a universal organization, the difficulty is to have a level of governance, which of course must be. It's easier to impose the highest quality at the top, but you must, from top down, try to raise the level of governance universally. That's a big challenge.
Got the high sign that we get one more question. Here it is. From the October 20th report, the last sentence. Quote, FIFA has a long road ahead. It needs serious organizational and cultural reform, and all of us as FIFA members are committed to them, end quote. To both, excuse me. How does anyone in this room, how does anyone listening online, how can they be assured, how can they know that in fact you and everyone in the process truly are committed to meaningful reform and particularly meaningful cultural reform?
Well, frankly, if I had not accepted that proposal to chair this committee, I mean, I only accepted it because I'm totally committed to reform. Frankly, I have not much to learn from this, except flack in the media, criticism there, and so on, and I'm used to that, I'm not worried. But all the members I noticed of the committee, and I was very impressed because at first I thought that the members of the committee, I was told they are not so independent, they represent the confederations, but I found out that these people are totally dedicated to reform. The problem is that we have to first convince the executive committee and above all the Congress, 26th of February. That's a big challenge. But we believe in it, we are committed, we want it because we think it's, FIFA deserves far better than the status which is it under now. Again, FIFA has done lots of, there are millions of wonderful people in the world of soccer. There are thousands and thousands of dedicated leaders, coaches, players, and fans, and all these people, they deserve a reform, and I think I sense the will to change. Sometimes, you know, you get the first blow, you're not knocked out, the second, and now I think, of course, when you are planning to have breakfast at the Bow, like in Zurich in May, peacefully, and instead of room service at your door with the breakfast, you see Schweizerische Polizei, Swiss police, that gives you a shock. And that shock triggered, I think, a conscience which was there. One should not underscore the fact that FIFA has tried has already launched reforms. Many people did not know that, for instance, they have changed the statutes. This was not, the people at large were not understanding and were not seeing. There's been a lot of reform. There's a lot of independence. Excuse me, which organization quickly suspends a president and a secretary general? It's FIFA which did it. It's no outsiders. Huh? So the institution has a lot of good things, has a big crisis, has big problems to solve. But I feel that there is a will. If there is a will, there is a way, and we are there to help contribute to that.
With that, our time is up. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.